The Iranian regime has officially crossed the ultimate red line, and now their biggest allies are betraying them. In a desperate bid to survive the relentless US bombardment, Tehran has started blowing up commercial tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. But the blackmail completely backfired. By choking off world's oil supply, Iran accidentally crippled the Asian markets, forcing China to publicly condemn the regime and abandon them at the United Nations. The Islamic Republic has officially united the entire planet against itself. And the story starts with the shocking betrayal from Beijing. Even China is now calling these Iranian attacks unacceptable. Take a listen.
China does not agree with the attacks on Gulf states and condemns all indiscriminate attacks on civilians and non-military targets. The urgent task is to immediately cease military operations and prevent further expansion of the conflict. The solution lies in returning to dialogue and negotiation as soon as possible and striving to restore peace. The fundamental solution is to jointly return to the right track of abiding by international law and the basic norms of international relations.
Now, rising oil prices are a problem for everyone, but for China, this problem is existential. Take a look at the clip on your screen. Oil shortage is already playing out on the streets inside of China. There are massive lines of Chinese drivers lining up at gas stations to fill their tanks before there's a major price increase. That's because, you see, almost all the oil that passes through the Strait of Hormuz goes to Asia, and vast majority of that goes to China, as you can see from the Bloomberg chart on your screen. Now, I want to be clear, this isn't just Iranian oil. This is taking into account all of Gulf oil. Look at this Reuters data visualization. Saudi Arabia sends around 1.6 billion barrels a year to China. Iraq, pretty much the same story. Majority of their oil goes to China. UAE, the same story. And even the oil that's not going to China, majority of it is going to rest of Asian countries. In fact, very little of the Gulf oil actually goes to the United States or Europe or to the rest of the world. Asian countries depend on the Strait of Hormuz more than anyone else on this planet, and Iran just turned it into a war zone. This is exactly why the countries that Iran believed it to be its allies are now turning against the regime. Being an Iranian ally is just not working out for these countries. If you need more proof, just look at Oman. 2 days ago, Iran attacked oil refineries and ports in Oman. But here's the thing. Oman doesn't really fit into Iranian excuse for this attack. Iranian regime keeps saying that they're going after countries that have US bases and countries that are working with the United States. Well, guess what? Oman has no US bases. Oman in fact tried to negotiate a peace deal, a nuclear deal between the United States and Iran. And on top of that, Oman has refused to let US use its airspace or territory against Iran. That means Oman has done everything that Iran has asked for. They have met every demand that the Islamic regime has put forward for the world. They have stayed neutral. And despite all this, Iran attacked them anyways. This is when the world realized Iran might just be saying one thing, but what it's doing is pure terrorism. Oman had nothing to do with this war and they're suffering anyway. The reason for this is simple. Iran cannot fight against the United States militarily. They can't fight against Israel either. So their only hope is terrorism. Attack merchant ships that have nothing to do with the war. Attack these countries that are just providing oil to the world and drive up oil prices. Make the world feel enough pain that the US and Israel just gave up. That's the Iranian strategy. Terrorism until the world surrenders. But guess what? It's not working. It's uniting the world against them. A UN Security Council resolution was just passed condemning Iranian attacks. And here's what makes this resolution historic. 13 countries voted in favor of this resolution and 0 voted against it. In fact, China and Russia, 2 permanent members of the Security Council, 2 countries that you would expect to defend Iran, actually abstained from this vote. They didn't vote yes, but they refused to vote no. Iran's 2 biggest protectors just abandoned them on the world stage. And this has big consequences. Here's the US ambassador to the UN explaining why this is such a big deal. Now, before we get into this clip, just a quick reminder to hit the like and subscribe button down below because it really does help us out in the algorithm. Now, take a listen.
But in this case, here's why it's such a big deal, this resolution in the Security Council by all of our Gulf allies today. Number one, a lot of these Gulf nations historically have kind of been in a neutral position when it comes to Iran. Qatar, for example, shares a huge gas field for them. Well, today, they are unified, they are standing together, there's no disagreement amongst them, and they are publicly on the world stage condemning Iran and calling them out for the indiscriminate firing in all direction of hotels, resorts, ports, airports. This strategy Iran has of trying to sow chaos and shake our allies and even shake us in Israel has absolutely backfired. You are seeing the Abraham Accords coalition standing strong and fighting back. And then another piece to that, Sean, was guess where Iran and guess where Russia and China were today? China and Russia abstained. They backed away. They didn't stand with Iran when it really came down to it, especially with the Gulf Arabs standing strong. So look, we defended Israel today and its strikes against Hezbollah in its fight to the north. Today in the UN Security Council, we had all the Gulf Arabs 13-0 with 135 nations standing with them. And then tomorrow, again, what the heck is the UN good for? Well, tomorrow we're going to have them talking about snapback sanctions and keeping the maximum pressure up that President Trump put in place his first term and put back in place this second term. So we're fighting the fight on all fronts, Sean. And this is the diplomacy that we can have on the world stage to match what our great warfighters are doing.
And it's not just condemnation. We're getting reports that the Gulf states might actually join the war. Their civilians are getting hit, their ports are burning, and their economy is going down the gutters. At some point, they have to respond. That's how you build deterrence. So that's what they're considering exactly. Take a listen.
I want to be careful with my reporting here. I'm also working on a story about this, but there are conversations happening behind the scenes about possible involvement of Gulf states. They understand they're taking a massive amount of ballistic missile fire and drone attacks against not just U.S. military targets in their countries, but also the civilian population there. And so certainly this is a consideration. I've also been talking with Gulf sources, and they say there is a red line. We're trying to understand what that red line is as these attacks unfold. But the fact that we're seeing drone attacks and missile attacks against cities like Doha, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai, these are areas where international tourists go. We know there were thousands of American citizens earlier in this war that had just been vacationing there. These are countries that are not used to taking this type of incoming fire, very different from Israel. And so those conversations are taking place and considerations are underway about more involvement, possibly not just defensive, but also offensive capabilities.
One option that is being discussed right now is an international coalition to escort vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. And this is not just the United States or Gulf countries that are considering this. Even European countries want this to happen because this brings down oil prices. And guess what? This wouldn't be the first time. Back in the Reagan era, the US Navy literally had to force the strait open. And that's exactly what the US is looking to do again. Here's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent explaining what the future holds.
It is my belief that as soon as it is militarily possible, the U.S. Navy, perhaps with an international coalition, will be escorting vessels through.
And that came up just now in this situation room.
Your words, not mine. But again,
are we days away from that?
We've been planning for this. We've done scenario analysis for months, for weeks, leading into this. So,
but it's a prospect in the coming days then?
It is a prospect as soon as we have complete control of the skies and are degrading they have no air force. The Navy is sunk, literally and figuratively, and the munitions factories, the rebuilding capabilities for the missiles, completely degraded. So as soon as it is possible for to ensure safe passage, we will do it.
And as I said, it's not just the United States that's considering this. We have European countries like France who are making public comments about taking part in a mission like this in an international coalition. Here we have a French minister talking about their plans.
Our priority has been clear, which is to build a coalition to be able to keep the freedom of navigation and circulation in the Strait of Hormuz. This is 20% of the flow of oil around the world. We've had similar missions actually that have been quite successful. I'm thinking especially of the European mission Aspides in the Red Sea to push back against the Houthis. France, Greece and others are major parts of that mission. The French President Macron was in Cyprus on Monday to reassure and send a message of solidarity to our friends and allies of the European Union who have been attacked in this war, calling also on countries to build this coalition to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. Other options are on the table when it comes to measures that could be taken by the G7. As you know, France and European countries have strategic reserves of oil, and we will also be looking at measures on a national level, especially to control any kind of opportunistic margin of speculation by distributors of gasoline across the country. This is something that the French government is looking at to be able to control any kind of speculative increase in price.
Now, lastly, I have something interesting. You see, ever since this war started, there's been a radio frequency that's broadcasting random numbers in Persian. Many people assume that it's some kind of code that is being relayed to spies. And publicly, you can hear the numbers on a radio frequency, but you cannot decode it. You cannot make sense of what is being said. But what makes this interesting to a lot of people is the fact that this has been ongoing nonstop. The voice behind this radio frequency just keeps saying random numbers in Persian. And that's why this has become such a big news. Take a listen to more details.
Listen to this. On the first day of the U.S.-Israeli attacks on Iran, something strange appeared on the airwaves. A mysterious shortwave radio broadcast. A man's voice calmly reading random number sequences in Persian. Radio enthusiasts first picked it up on February 28th, the first day of the war. The broadcast follows a loose pattern, a string of numbers read aloud for 2 rounds, then a pause, then the Persian word for attention, repeated 3 times, then the numbers start again. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. No one knows exactly where the signal is coming from, but radio enthusiasts have narrowed it down to somewhere in Western Europe. 5 days into the war, things got even stranger. Someone started jamming the signal. Electronic noise suddenly flooded the frequency, making the numbers nearly impossible to hear. But the broadcast didn't stop, it just moved to a different frequency. RFERL independently recorded the transmission on March 10th, meaning it has been broadcasting around 2 weeks, more or less daily. So what is it? The most common explanation is something called a number station, an old-school Cold War spy tool, a shortwave radio broadcast used to send encrypted messages to intelligence agents around the world. Anyone can listen to the numbers, but without the decoder, the message is essentially impossible to understand. Aiken Fernandez, who's considered a guru on the subject of number stations, says it's absolutely unbreakable. The number keys are perfectly random, and figuring it out mathematically wouldn't really work either. And even if you translate them into words, the message would likely still make no sense without the right decoder key. Okay, that's the first thing. What about the jamming? Who's jamming the signal and why? So the kind of interference being used here is called a bubble jammer. Basically, it drowns out the signal so the transmission is impossible to understand. Historically, this kind of jamming was used by governments trying to block foreign broadcasts. During the Cold War, Soviet bloc countries regularly jammed broadcasts from the BBC, Deutsche Welle, or Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, which were beaming uncensored news and information into the Eastern Bloc. These days, the Persian language broadcasts, the BBC, and Radio Free Europe's Radio Farda are also being jammed by the Iranian government on a similar frequency. So if Tehran was responsible for this mysterious Persian number signal, it's pretty unlikely that Tehran will be jamming its own signal. That brings us back to the original question. Who's behind the number station broadcast? Could it be the United States sending coded messages to agents inside Iran? Or maybe it's Israel? Or how about Turkey, which is no fan of the Iranian government? Then it gets even muddier. ABC News reports that the US government had sent an alert to law enforcement agencies about an intercepted encrypted transmission. The transmission could, quote, be intended to activate or provide instructions to pre-position sleeper assets operating outside the originating country, ABC quoted the alert as saying. The CIA did not respond to requests for comment. So for now, the signal remains a mystery. What do you think? Let us know in the comments.